So, you want to build a Gundam model? Perhaps you're interested, but not really sure where to start. Stuck wondering what supplies you're going to need? Well, I got you covered. Good afternoon, my name is Corsentino, and today we're going to be talking about how to get started building Gundams. Specifically, we're here to talk about 5 price points for someone new to the hobby who wants to get started, as well as the common upgrade path of the tools you will encounter along your journey to master the art. In this introductory video, we are going to cover the cost of the tools you will need to get started building Gundams, from the bare essentials to the more expensive instruments. The cost of a Gundam kit is going to be the same regardless of what tools you choose to buy, so we will put that aside for the purposes of this video. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely good and bad choices for your first Gundam, but that is a topic for another time. So, I've been building for around a decade now, and looking back, I can definitely say that I've started from rock bottom and slowly climbed my way up the ladder. Not that I'm an expert. I haven't gotten off that ladder yet. I only wish such a video like this existed back when I began, as the knowledge would have made my progress much faster and a lot less jank. This is it, guys. This is the primer that I needed, but that didn't exist at the time. And before I begin, I would like to mention that this applies mostly to people who are not pivoting from another similar hobby, such as miniature wargaming or military-scale modeling. Many of the things I'm going to mention here may seem familiar if you partake in either of those hobbies. This is for people who are new to the small-scale scene as a whole, though it may also be good refresher material for those who are currently practicing as well. I'd also like to mention that you can find extremely cheap starter kits, which may include multiple tools up to around tier 3, but since I can't speak to their quality, I'm going to be ignoring those for the purposes of this video. And before we begin, I just want to mention that I stream my builds live on Twitch, and if you're looking to pick up more tips and techniques, it's a great place to learn. So, disclaimers and channel plug aside, let's begin. We'll start with an honorable mention, Tier 0. At Tier 0, you won't have to spend a penny on tools. The only tool you're going to need is anything that can cut through the plastic gates. This was where I started. Yep, this nail clipper saw me through at least 4 of my earliest kits. It's certainly not the best, the cuts aren't the cleanest, and it's got pretty awkward ergonomics to be honest. But it can snip, and that's pretty much the bare minimum. You could also put small wire cutters or general purpose flush cutters into this tier, but in my opinion, the bulkier nature of the blade on wire cutters makes them less optimal, as it can't cut as close and can damage the plastic more easily. But hey, this is Tier 0. The idea is that these are items you may already own, and if you're on an absolute shoestring of a budget and can't even spare the cost of a pizza, maybe tools can wait. At Tier 1, we get our first hobby-specific tools, side cutters. Not the hardware store ones, real hobbyist side cutters. The names may vary. They might be called nippers or sprue cutters, or the aforementioned side cutters, just to name a few. The side cutter is the foundation of pretty much any model builder's toolkit. Regardless of how many special tools you will end up collecting, you're gonna need one of these to take parts off the runner. Technically doable with other tools, but none are as efficient and suited to the task as these. You can use these to remove parts from the runners and even clean up the cut area in some situations. A good pair of side cutters and a basic understanding of plastic deformation will allow you to assemble any Bandai Gundam kit straight out of the box. Side cutters range in price from around 15-ish for an entry-level one to around 55-ish for a top-tier cutter, such as the God Hand. Both of these are fine choices and will be enough for you to assemble your first kit. But this is just the beginning. In order to properly clean up the areas where the parts were cut, we will need to take it a step further. At Tier 2, we get ourselves 2 things, a hobby knife and a sanding stick. These also come under a variety of names. You might have heard these referred to as X-Acto knives, which, by the way, is a brand, or modeler knives or craft knives. Either way, you're going to want one with replaceable blades. The number 11 is the most common blade design, and it's fairly versatile. But there are many other specialized designs that can easily be swapped in as needed. Prices for knives tend to hover around the $5 mark, and replacement blades can be had for a few bucks. The standing stick is a bit broader of a concept. You can buy these ready to go or simply make your own from sandpaper and, well, whatever stick you have lying around, plus some glue. These specifically are multi-grit nail files from a beauty store. No joke. This stick was probably less than $2. Both of these tools at Tier 2 are meant to help you with removing the nub and cleaning up the spot where the part was cut from the runner. Unlike side cutters, the knife and sander gives you a lot more control and more options when it comes to removing that last tiny bit of plastic from the part. Good use of these tools will make the cut marks practically invisible. So now that we've got the basic cleanup down, it's time to start adding some detail. At Tier 3, we get this, or perhaps this, as well as this. These are a few examples of what are known as panel lining markers, or simply panel liners. The purpose of these is to color in the recessed panel lines on the plastic. This adds a lot of contrast and brings out the molded details of the parts. Panel lining can dramatically improve the aesthetics of a Gundam model, especially on light-colored ones, by bringing out surface detail that would otherwise be too faint to notice. Seriously, just get a fully color-accurate Gundam, cut and clean the parts nicely, add the details, panel line, and slap on a clear coat, and you'll have a clean build that can stand proudly on your display shelf. And at around $3-ish a pen, its detail per dollar ratio is really a no-brainer. The clear coat is a bit more expensive, and unfortunately, hardware store clear coat doesn't really cut it. That stuff is a lot thicker than the hobby grade stuff and will bloat the lines of the kit. Hobby grade clear coats tend to come in smaller cans, with prices ranging from around $8 to $12-ish. At this tier, you can make any color-accurate kit look great, the way the designers intended. In fact, if that is your goal, we really need not go any further. But if you want to step outside the box, take it beyond stock, and truly make it your own, we will need to go a step further. At Tier 4, we introduce paint, and therefore the ability to deviate from the colors as they are out of the box. Now, let's be real here. The airbrush and compressor combo is easily the most expensive set of equipment that you could acquire for the purposes of model building. So as a stepping stone toward that goal, consider starting off with aerosol paints, otherwise known as spray cans. But keep in mind, not all spray paints are made equal. Some are designed for a lot better coverage, some are made for smaller, finer jobs. If your budget allows it, I would suggest getting paints that are suited to the small scale. Tamiya and Testors, for example, make spray paints designed for model use. They spray finer and slower than hardware store spray paints, which is important, as we don't want to go too thick. Hobby spray paints will typically run about $8-ish a can, which, depending on how many colors you need, can start to get expensive. To complement the paint, it's a good idea to pick up some masking tape. Tape gives you the option of selectively coloring your parts. In this example, we can see that the edge of the blade is clearly a different color than the flat of the blade. Plus, tape is pretty inexpensive, with the Tamiya stuff going for only around $3 a roll, and that's about as expensive as it gets. And you can, if you can find the right type, use the stuff from the hardware store, which comes in much larger rolls, for a bit of a bulk savings. Now, if you don't care to change the color separation pattern of the kit, and you're working with a kit with very good color separation out of the box, the masking tape might not be necessary. But in my experience, I found that once you start painting, it's inevitable to want to personalize the color. And on that note, to truly personalize the color, we'll need to go yet one step further. This is it. At Tier 5, we've reached the point at which you can make professional, display-grade Gundam models. You effectively have access to every color possible. At Tier 5, we're getting an airbrush, as well as a few support items. In all seriousness, I highly doubt anyone would opt to start out at Tier 5. Plenty of people ultimately see this as the end goal. Once you have the airbrush, the next step up is physical modification, like applique armor, greeblies, and custom equipment. And that is definitely not a topic for a beginner's guide such as this. At Tier 5, we introduce the idea of removing seams and filling imperfections. That's what the plastic cement and putty are for. After all, it doesn't matter what color the plastic ends up being if we're going to paint over it anyway. And speaking of paint, the airbrush. With the airbrush, the sky's the limit. Your color palette is limited only by your imagination and your wallet. Speaking of wallet, it's definitely gonna be a bit lighter if we're at Tier 5. Even a starter airbrush with compressor is gonna run at least 120, and that's not including the paint and solvent, which you may need as well. You can go lower, but buyer beware. You do get what you pay for. Thankfully, the cement and putty aren't nearly as expensive, at around $10 and $5 each, respectively. So let's recap. At Tier 1, we start our toolkit with the all-important side cutters. Stepping up to Tier 2 gets us a knife and a sander. Tier 3 adds panel liners and a can of clear coat. Moving up to Tier 4 brings us tape and spray paint. And finally, at Tier 5, we get plastic cement, putty, and the almighty airbrush. So what tier's right for you? Where's a good place to start? Keep in mind that these prices don't include the cost of the model kit itself, so adjust the prices accordingly. Ultimately, it comes down to your budget, and more importantly, your time. The higher the tier, the more potential your finished projects will have. But as your toolkit grows, so must your skill set, and each step up adds more to the process, necessitating a greater amount of time. I can't tell you what's right for you, but looking back, I would have told a younger me to start at Tier 3, since it provides a solid result without the significant time and effort investment of painting. And that about wraps it up. If you've made it this far, I hope you found this video helpful, or at the very least, halfway entertaining. If this video piqued your interest, and you want to learn more, you can catch my stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Corsentino, where I stream my builds and drop wisdom along the way. Drop by, say hi, ask some questions, bounce off some ideas. Either way, I hope this video has inspired you to take the next step. Let me know in the comments below what tier you're going to start at. Or, if you've already built a lot of models, let the community know how your journey began. I love a good story. And lastly, thank you for watching. Feel free to hit that subscribe button if you've learned something useful. And I will see you next time.